The night the casserole burned, I opened my father's laptop and found a second life, arranged in neat folders, each one named like it feared being noticed: utilities, receipts, photos 2, tax docs, archive. I was only trying to import a recipe card he'd scanned from me. Instead, I stared at a photo of my father smiling at a school play I didn't attend, holding a paper program that didn't list my name, standing in a gym I'd never seen beneath a banner that read, "Go Panthers." His arm looped a girl's shoulder. She looked 12. She looked like me at 12. The timer on the oven screeched and the smell of char hit, but my body didn't move. The photo timestamp read, "Last spring." He had told us the conference had run long, that the motel coffee tasted like mud, that he missed us. He had said it with that patient good humor of his, the good dad cadence he wore like an iron shirt. I dragged the photo to full screen and zoomed. On his ring finger, the gold band glinted. On his face, that same open smile I'd trusted since childhood. In the reflection of his glasses, I caught the ghost of a woman raising a phone. The oven kept screaming. For the first time in my life, I let it. I didn't know if I'd just found a mistake, a misunderstanding, or a door that wouldn't close again after I walked through it. I always told people my dad was the blueprint guy. He managed facilities for a hospital system in Portland, Oregon, which sounded dull until you saw him with a map. He loved arteries, pipes, corridors, supply lines. He could find a leak by the way a hallway felt cold at ankle height. At home, he drew routes for us to school that avoided 3-lane left turns and timed the lights. He kept our lives efficient. Bills on auto pay, old change at exactly 5,000 miles, summer trips planned in spreadsheets, color-coded by day. After Mom's second miscarriage, he started doing the grocery shopping without being asked, learned her brand of tea, stashed heating pads around the house like emergency kits. When I, at 29, stalled in a marketing job I hated, he helped me draft the email that got me an interview at a nonprofit I believed in. He was good, is what I'm saying. Good like a well-built bridge. You never think to doubt the bridge you're walking on until the asphalt shivers under your step. Even his flaws were tidy. He could be evasive about stress, all good kiddo, and he stayed late more than Mom liked, but he never smelled like liquor or came home mean. He coached my middle school debate team when our teacher quit. He fixed the neighbor's porch light during a rainstorm. He hugged with both arms. I believed in him the way you believe in gravity. That night with the burned casserole, sitting at the kitchen table while rain rasped the window screen, I copied that one photo to my desktop, then opened photos 2. Inside, birthdays I didn't blow candles on, beach days with the shore I didn't know, a Christmas morning with a tree that wasn't ours, and a boy in flannel pajamas unwrapping a bike while my father, my blueprint guy, held the seat brace steady. My mouth went dry. The bridge under me didn't shiver. It dropped an inch. I didn't tell Mom immediately. I closed the laptop gently, rescued the casserole, like that mattered, and took 2 bites while the heat burned my tongue and made everything feel present, controllable. After she fell asleep to an old detective show, I reopened the laptop and searched the folders with the mechanical calm of a person counting breaths. The metadata pointed like arrows. Spokane, Washington. Repeat dates, evenly spaced. March, May, July. I cross-checked with his travel calendar on our shared family app. Conferences in Seattle, Vancouver, Boise. Close enough to be plausible, far enough to hide a detour. I told myself there could be an explanation: mentoring program, extended family I'd somehow forgotten, charity work. The stories frayed in my hands. At 1:13 a.m., I opened an email thread named School Forms, where he'd forwarded insurance documents from his work address. The message body read, "Use this policy number for registration. I'll handle the premium. Proud of you." Below, The recipient's name, Lydia. The last name wasn't ours. A simple, ordinary name. I clicked her address and found nothing public. My father, king of neatness, had left the smallest thread exposed. I tugged. A city directory pinged back an address near a Spokane park and a school that matched the Panthers banner. The girl's last name, Lydia's last name, matched the boys on a soccer roster glued like a PDF to the school's site. My father's name wasn't anywhere on it. He lived like a ghost in their photos. Reflections, edges, hands. And yet, he was everywhere I looked. When the house finally creaked in the way it does just before 3 a.m., I heard my father snoring down the hall. It had always soothed me as a kid. Now it ticked like a metronome, keeping time with a problem that wanted to be solved. I whispered, careful not to wake the dog. I have to know. The sentence felt like a step past a warning sign. I tested my decision in daylight. I watched him pour coffee, kiss Mom's cheek, ask if I needed the car. He had this way of holding the mug or his ring caught the window light and made a clean, bright line. He was leaving for Yakima, Boilers. I knew the route to Yakima. I knew the detours that would place him in Spokane by lunch. I told him to drive safe, like that had ever stopped anyone from doing what they wanted. When his taillights dissolved into steady rain, I took my own car and left too. I told myself I was checking, just checking, so I wouldn't risk accusing a good man of the worst thing. The road east loosened something in me. The Columbia River ran the way it always runs, indifferent, carved deep. I counted exits like prayer beads. In Ritzville, I almost turned back, then pictured the girl in the photo, the one with my smile at 12, and kept going. Spokane was gray and practical. I parked across from the park the directory had mentioned and watched, feeling foolish in my Portland plates. I expected nothing, wanted nothing. Inside an hour, a silver SUV I recognized, his, rolled to the curb and flashed its hazard lights. My father stepped out with a bag of groceries, reached into the passenger seat, and lifted a tin of cinnamon rolls with the care of a man who knows exactly who will cheer when he brings them inside. A woman opened the door of a brick duplex, Lydia. She was mid-30s, hair in a knot, wearing a sweatshirt stamped with a pharmacy logo. She leaned into him not like a lover kissing hello, but like a spouse sharing breath on a winter doorstep. 2 kids thundered behind her, the boy from the Christmas photo, the girl from the gym. They pulled my father into their kitchen by the hands. He laughed, the low, unguarded sound he used at our holiday breakfasts when the dog stole bacon. The door closed, the hazard lights kept clicking. I had thought discovery would feel sharp. It felt dull, like an instrument left humming on the wrong counter. When the lights finally died, I stared at the empty street and waited for some version of me to catch up. None did. I drove to a motel and checked in under my own name because the seat was already suffocating me in other ways. I turned on the heater. I didn't cry. I stared at the textured ceiling until my eyes watered and thought, I am in the part of a story where the narrator makes a mistake she can't undo. The next scene had to count. I didn't knock. I couldn't. Instead, I built a plan. Because plans were the only language my body trusted. I listed what I knew. He had an address, a rhythm, a calendar that hid truth in plausible trips. He paid insurance. He was careful but not invisible. I took photos, not for spectacle, but to not feel insane later. A receipt of the duplex number on my phone, a shot of his SUV, plates like a barcode. At a pharmacy on the corner, I bought a notebook, wrote Spokane on the first page, and dated it. I found a coffee that didn't taste like anything and took notes on the things that did. The soccer team flag taped inside the duplex window. The mailbox labeled L. Kramer. The way my father exited at 3:17 p.m. with a paper bag of what looked like science fair supplies. He looked lighter in his body than he looked at home, like a backpack set down. A hollow shell of me wanted to be angry at that, but the part of me that had watched him carry my mother's grief also recognized fatigue when it unclenched its teeth. I waited until he left for a hardware store and then finally did what I dreaded. I texted Mom. Running late, stayed at desk after lunch. She sent back a thumbs up. I added a second lie. Might crash at errands if it runs late, because if I said only one, it would look fragile, easy to snap. Then I called Erin. She said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "No," very softly. And then, "I'll explain." And then, "Please say I'm with you if anyone asks." Erin said yes, without asking for the receipt. I told myself I was collecting leverage, but what I was collecting was proof that the ground wasn't going to firm up on its own. At dusk, I left a note on my father's windshield that read, "We need to talk. Tomorrow, 7 p.m., our kitchen." No name, no accusation, just the route home redrawn. Driving back to Portland, I watched mile markers like I was counting down to detonation. I rehearsed every version of the conversation, none of which ended with relief. At home, Mom had reheated the casserole and joked it tasted like campfire. I said, smoke made everything feel like fall. The lie stuck to my teeth. I barely slept, which made the day feel bright and brittle and everything at once. At 6:58 p.m., I placed the laptop on the kitchen table like a piece of evidence and opened Photos 2. At 7:03, my father's keys scraped the lock. He was 5 minutes late, which he never was on purpose. His eyes, when he saw the screen, went very, very still. It wasn't guilt that flashed there first, it was math. He was running the angles the way he might have diagrammed sewer lines under a wing of the hospital. Then he sat, his shoulders squared like a man stepping into weather. I had expected denial, or anger, or a speech that turned the ground under me into fog. He didn't do that. He said, "Okay." He didn't reach for the laptop. He didn't reach for me. Okay, in my father's voice, had always meant, "I'm with you." Tonight it meant, "This is real." My mother, standing at the stove, turned off the burner with exaggerated care and joined us. She studied his face the way you look at a painting you've loved for years and only now notice the small figure hiding at the edge of the canvas. "How long?" I asked. My voice was flat because everything inside me was water. 11 years, he said. The math knocked the wind from me. I was 18 when the first seed of that other family must have rooted. College acceptance letters, the year he grew a beard, the year he started staying late for capital projects, the year he told me I could do anything if I planned hard enough. "Why?" Mom asked. Just that, a single syllable question that weighed a house. "I didn't plan to hurt anyone," he began, which meant he had planned something. He spoke like a man walking a catwalk between two buildings. He said he met Lydia at a facility training, her pharmacy contracted with the hospital. He said it felt like shaking the hand of someone who'd been in a room he'd evacuated years ago and suddenly realizing the smoke had never cleared. He said he had not wanted another life. He had wanted relief from the one where his wife bled in bathrooms and his daughter pretended she didn't hear, where he was the man who fixed pipes and drew routes and still couldn't reroute grief out of the house. He said the first time he drove to Spokane was to tell Lydia it was impossible. He said the second time there was a storm on the pass and he stayed. He said he drew a map and then refused to look down. "And the kids?" I asked, because maps are one thing, children are a country. He put his elbows on the table as if to keep himself from floating away and said, "They didn't ask to be born into my stupidity." He said he sent money quietly because he had the kind of job that could hide a modest second premium if you filed it under vendor relations. He said he once tried to leave both lives, to send money and disappear, but both households had collapsed under their own specifics. School enrollment, mortgage rates, birthdays that didn't move when he moved away from them. He said he told himself he could be useful in two places, that usefulness would make the wrongness bearable. He said it hadn't. He looked at my mother then, really looked, and the sound our house made in that moment was the quiet of a building realizing the crack in its foundation isn't new, it's just finally visible. Mom's mouth was a straight line. "You chose for us," she said. It wasn't loud, but it landed like a verdict. In my chest, a door opened onto a dark room I didn't have a name for yet. The logistics came first, slam cut practical. Where would he sleep? What would we tell people? His toothbrush on the sink looked idiotic, an absurd prop from a gentler play. He said he would go to a hotel. Mom said, "No, not tonight. You'll sleep on the couch." This wasn't mercy. It was control of the perimeter. He nodded like a man grateful to be told what to do by any voice but his own. We didn't talk about Spokane. We talked about Portland, the mortgage, the joint account, the Chevy with his name on the title. The dog crawled under the table and put her head on my feet like she had done on every ordinary night of my life. I kept seeing the kids in Spokane, their hands on his sleeves, how gravity had tilted toward him as soon as he appeared. I kept seeing myself at 12, asking him to wait in the driveway while I ran back for my clarinet. He had waited. He had always waited, unless he was in another state being the same man for other people who trusted him. When the house finally dimmed, Mom spread a blanket on the couch and placed a glass of water on the coffee table. She did it with the calm of a person staging a scene for a stranger to walk through it without breaking anything else. I lay awake listening to the smallest noises, fridge hum, rain on the gutter, my father turning once on the couch and then forcing himself still. At 2:11 a.m., he whispered into the dark, "I'm sorry." He said it like a man testing a bridge he built to see if it could hold a truth. The word didn't move. The bridge didn't fall. Morning would decide what carried weight. Morning brought the people who were not us. My aunt texted about a family barbecue. My boss emailed a reminder about a donor kickoff. The world insultingly kept its schedule. We triaged. I took a sick day. Mom called her friend Marilyn and said only, "Not today." Dad brewed coffee and didn't drink it. Like a ritual he wanted to honor while refusing the comfort it offered. He asked if we wanted to see everything. Emails, receipts, the calendar with the trips that weren't trips. We said yes, because denial is a luxury we could no longer afford. He opened his laptop like a priest lifting a lid. I scanned the thread with Lydia, looking for the sentence where he'd say, "I love you," so I could hate him correctly. It wasn't there. There was care. There were logistics. There was, "How did the math test go?" and "Proud of you for the pharmacy supervisor promotion." There was money, not lavish, but steady. There was a spreadsheet tab named School Years, with columns for supplies, fees, field trips, dates tidy as a ledger. On a drive lettered E, I found scans of 2 birth certificates. The father line was blank. My father's handwriting on a sticky note tucked between files read, "We do not lie to the state." I stared until the words blurred. He had wanted to be their father without making the state say it out loud. Cowardice dressed as decency looks very similar to decency until you ask it to stand in court. "Did Mom know Lydia?" I asked him. He shook his head, the smallest motion in the room. "Does Lydia know about us?" He closed his eyes, opened them. "He knows I care for my family here," he said carefully. "Not wife, not daughter. Family, the word that stretches to fit whatever you put inside it." I wrote a single sentence in my notebook. "Everyone knows something, no one knows everything." Then I drew a line under it because I needed a rule to carry into the next move. We didn't ask permission. We set a time. Saturday, neutral ground, the park near the duplex. Mom said she was coming. She said it without a tremor. We drove in 2 cars because togetherness felt like a lie the freeway would punish. In Spokane, the sky held a stubborn blue. Kids on scooters arrowed past my still hands. Lydia arrived in scrubs, hair damp like she'd rushed from a shower. Keys still ringed on her fingers. She looked at my father first, the quick assessment of a person gauging triage. What can be saved? What must be cut? Then she looked at my mother and me and went very still in the way of someone who knows exactly what silence contains. "Hi," she said, voice low. "I'm Lydia." She didn't offer a hand. Mom said her own name like she was marking a map. I said mine and felt 19 inside it. We sat at a picnic table. My father stood, then sat, then settled with his hands folded like a man who was practiced confession in a mirror but didn't rehearse the part where other people breathe. Lydia's mouth trembled once, then steadied. "He told me you were good," she said to Mom, not as flattery, but as a statement from a file. Mom nodded once, a motion I felt in my teeth. "He told us you were work travel," she said. Lydia winced, not theatrically, just like a nurse who knows exactly what a number means on a chart and can't erase it. "I am sorry," Lydia said. Not performative, not collective responsibility, a sentence placed carefully between women who both deserved better. "The kids?" Mom asked. "They know him as—" Lydia swallowed. "Tom," she said. The fake name didn't fit my father's posture, but it fit the cowardice he'd curated. Close enough to answer if yelled on a soccer field, far enough to not answer in a courtroom. The boy and the girl arrived with scooters 10 minutes later, laughing, hungry, sun on their cheeks. My father's body leaned toward them before he could stop it, like a plant to a window. He didn't rise. He stayed in the chair and let the sunlight break him open in front of everyone he'd broken. We spoke quietly while the kids looped the path. We built a plan, not of outcomes, but of immediate controls. School pickups paused, money documented, an attorney found who handled the kind of messes that pretend to be simple until you put them in writing. When we stood to leave, Lydia touched my mother's sleeve, the barest thing. "None of us are going to be okay quickly," she said. It sounded like both advice and a diagnosis. The girl coasted by, her front wheel wobbling, then straightened herself and shot forward. The tiny correction made my breath catch. I knew then that survival looked less like a grand decision and more like 1,000 micro adjustments you make before you hit the curb. Lawyers make slow weather. Papers were filed, accounts examined. Words like support and visitation and equitable sat on pages that didn't know how weekends feel. My father moved to a small rental near a light rail stop and bought duplicate items at Target. Second toaster, second set of towels, second coffee mug without the chip. He became a man divided by a calendar that finally told the truth. The hospital reassigned him to a role with fewer trips, not a punishment officially, but a narrowing. At night, the dog slept in my room because the couch no longer held the smell of the person she'd slept under for years. Mom started seeing a therapist whose office plants were all healthy, which we took as a good sign. She didn't ask forgiveness. He didn't demand it. We learned the shape of evenings without his practiced whistle coming up the walkway. I cooked dinner and realized my hands had memorized his ways. Hot pan first, then oil. We took inventory, what to keep, what to store, what to give away. When I went with him to the rental to help assemble a bed, I watched him fight the instructions too long and then surrender, following each step as written. "I always thought I could read complicated drawings," he said wryly. I said, "Maybe the trick is you can't draw while you're also moving." He nodded, the expression that used to mean pride now landing like grief wearing a polite face. I didn't hug him. I wanted to. Love doesn't evaporate on Scandal's schedule. It sits in your muscles, stubborn, and asks what else is true. I started running in the mornings before work, the river path, a simple straight and back. I like the way distance makes an honest ledger. Whatever you run out, you must run back. On a Thursday, Lydia texted me. She had my number now because attorneys break glass in case of emergency. She asked if I could meet the kids at a game on Saturday when their Uncle Tom couldn't be there due to meetings, real ones, documented. "They deserve continuity," she wrote. The phrase felt clinical until I pictured the girl's wobbling front wheel. I said yes and immediately worried I was betraying something. Then I pictured the picnic table in the narrow blue of that day's sky and thought maybe loyalty now looked like kids remembering adults showed up, even when their labels changed. Saturday, I drove to Spokane alone. I sat in the bleachers and clapped at good passes. The girl glanced up twice, uncertain, then gave me a quick chin lift of recognition. The boy's shot hit the crossbar at the last minute, and he groaned, then laughed, like a person practicing resilience. It wasn't my life. It was a life I could touch without stealing. On the drive back, I pulled off at a scenic overlook and cried once. Not for drama, just to get salt out of my body, so something else could take its place. Months gathered. The emergency became routine, which felt unjust and also like mercy. My father learned to answer to his real name in one kitchen and the false one in another, until attorneys told him the false one had to die. He corrected kids at a park, the boy bristling, the girl testing the new syllables in her mouth like a marble she'd refused to swallow. Mom found on Thursdays she could read again without resenting the author. I stopped checking every man at the grocery store for secret lives, mostly. Sometimes I caught my father looking at a blueprint rolled across his new desk, tracing a line with his finger that led nowhere. And I thought, he's remembering the version where he reroutes and prevents the flood. He drew two maps at once, then pretended one wasn't there. The flood came anyway. We are all living on higher ground now, even if the view isn't what any of us ordered. On a Sunday in October, I made cinnamon rolls from a can because the smell felt complicated, and I wanted to see if I could stand it. Mom laughed at the pop of the cardboard and said, "Your grandfather loved these," which is a way of making history bigger than the latest catastrophe. We ate them on paper plates. I texted Lydia a photo of the dog wearing a bandana the girl had left on our porch after a visit to the rental. Lydia sent back a photo of the kids drawing floor plans for imaginary houses. Rooms labeled piano, scooter garage, bunk beds, reading fort. The girl had drawn a hallway that looped back to the same room 3 times. Not a mistake, but a deliberate path. I stared at that loop longer than it warranted. I thought, maybe the point is not to map a perfect house. Maybe the point is that the hallway eventually returns you to a room where you can sit, set something down, and decide what to carry when you stand. I saved the picture. I opened my door to October air. I wrote this down because stories hold weight you can't lift alone. If I'm confessing, let me confess the last thing. I still love my father. Not the bridge I thought he was. The man who built 2 bridges and watched both crack, then stayed to direct traffic so fewer people fell. He is not forgiven. He is not exiled. He is both. I am learning to be both too. The daughter who knows and the daughter who still brings coffee to a folding chair beside a soccer field 2 cities away, because kids deserve continuity and because sometimes the safer route is the one you make by walking it. The cinnamon rolls cooled on the counter. The dog sighed. My phone buzzed with a calendar reminder that no longer lied. I turned it off and stood quiet in my own kitchen, listening to ordinary house sounds, the ones that remained, the ones rebuilt, and the ones I still don't trust, not yet, but might again.